My name's Paul Miller, and I am a clown, okay? Not one of those scary clowns, but, or maybe one of those scary clowns. I don't really know. So, just a couple months ago, Ringling Brothers closed in May of 2017. And in 2018, Ronald McDonald was kind of thrown out of McDonald's. So now there are no more Ronald McDonalds at McDonald's. So the clown right now is getting a bum rap. But let me explain that the clown's been here forever. So here's the king, all right? And then here's all the serfs and the plebes and the slaves trying to get to the king. And here's all the other royals who are jealous of the king, and they're trying to get to the king as well. So there exists this jester that kind of subverts authority, makes fun of the king, and they both laugh, and then the king stays in power. So this role of the clown in society has been here for a long time. And when there is a Democrat in the White House, it's AM radio that is the king, okay? And when there's a Republican in the White House, it's The Daily Show and South Park and NPR that is the clown, subverting this authority. So the clown's been around for a long time, but it's hard to get how the clown necessarily works. But 20 years now, I've been a clown, and we do a lot of work in a lot of different spaces. I dropped out of college to join the Circus, Ringling Brothers, and people were really not too happy with that. My parents weren't too happy. Certainly the dean at CCM wasn't too happy. But I said the University of Cincinnati's been here since 1818, and it'll be here next year. So, dropped out of college, joined the Circus. I know this is not a romantic show, but I'll give you a little teeny tiny bit of romantic advice, y'all. If you're going to drop out of college and join the Circus, ask your girl to marry you before you do all that stuff, or she's not going to be back when you get back. So my wife, Renee, we've been married 20 years, and she is a saint, a darling, an angel, and she's beauty, and I wouldn't be in business, really, without her. And she insists that I go back to get my degree. And a theater degree, some might say it's not really worth the paper it's printed on, okay? Or some might say it's awesome. So I own an old movie theater. So I'm really glad I got my theater degree because I've worked hard to get people into college, and I did finish college. Finishing what you start is very important. But all the good boys and girls who stayed in school, very few of them are still in business, in acting, or in show business. But since I joined the Circus, I had this kind of secret weapon. So at the auditions in New York City, there'd be 30, 40 people that looked just like you. Great shape, same build, same everything. And what is the differentiator? How are you going to grab the attention of these casting directors? So I would balance a chair on my chin. So that's all you can do, right? You have one prop when you're going to be auditioning. So I would take the chair. And it's a big one. But I'd take the chair, and I'd put it right on my chin, like this, and ta-da, okay? Those lighter chairs are a little bit easier, so you can do a few more tricks with those chairs. But that's how I got attention. In the positive way, I got attention, okay? So I got on As the World Turns, All My Children, One Life to Live. I was on all the soap operas. And I loved calling CCM saying, hey, turn on Channel 5 today, I got 3 lines. And I still get a 47-cent, it's never more than 50 cents, but the shows are still on the soap network, and I was in American Federation for Television and Radio Artists, I was in the union. So I've got about $36 in my AFTRA retirement account, which is kind of silly. But, so, did the Circus, that was awesome. Lived in New York City for a couple years. My wife made rent and had health insurance, so I got to street perform, hit the gym, get on the soap operas. It was a lot of fun. But then we took a job in Japan. So the Ringling Brothers, circus clowns, we kind of have this mafia. So there's an agent in Japan. His name's John Fox. I sent an audition tape. I got this job in Japan. And I was 6 months. So we left Manhattan to go to Japan. And it's pretty expensive. Manhattan's pretty expensive, but Japan is crazy expensive. So, but it was great pay, I worked 12 minutes a day. It was extraordinary. I did 3 4-minute bits. There were 2 Chinese acrobats. There were 2 acrobats from the Czech Republic, and the amazing comedy of Paul Mira. All right, it was a lot of fun. So, but it was crazy. It was a hot springs bath resort. So we bought nice resort clothes, thinking that we would, you know, be. We had no idea what a resort in Japan would be like. Basically, it was up in the mountains, and there were 14 different baths at this complex. And the Japanese would come, check in, put on a green bathrobe, and then go take baths all day. It was fascinating. And then every night they'd see the World Night Carnival, which was the circus, and the men would sit on this side of the audience, and the women would sit on this side, and it's just culturally fascinating to spend 6 months. There was an African-American guy from Cleveland, 2 guys from Wales, and my wife and I. We were the only foreigners in the whole prefecture in Fukushima, which is where they had that nuclear accident. I mean, we weren't right on the coast, but it basically was in that same area. And as a white guy, okay, it was fascinating because to have overt racism, we would be called gaijin, and gaijin translates essentially to hairy southern bastard, okay? And it's a derogatory term. And little kids would call us gaijin, and the elders would call us gaijin. And at the buffet, we'd go to the fancy buffet once a month because it was kind of expensive, but the people who were there were very, very short in stature because they didn't have a lot of calcium in their diet, a lot of elderly people at this resort. And they would take their plates and kind of stab me in the back when I was in line for the buffet and call me gaijin, like they didn't like us being in this buffet area. And it was very strange. And eventually talking about and figuring out it was because we nuked them, all right? But they started it, right? Okay, so it was a really weird, but for a white guy to experience overt racism from little people and no people, it really shifted my frame of reference. I mean, when I was in the circus, I met people from around the world, and that was fascinating because I grew up in Cleveland, in the suburbs, you know, but Cleveland's pretty neat because you have Canada and you have Cleveland, and then all these little cities around it. We're here in Cincinnati, and you have Cincinnati, and then you got the east side and west side, and then you got Kenton County and Campbell County and Boone County, and then you got southeastern Indiana. There's all this, it's very strange. It's like Hatfields and McCoys, really. You know, it's a city of 7 hills, and they stay on their hills. They got their chili parlor. They got their sports team they love. They vacation with the same people on the same cul-de-sac at the same destination. You know, there's a mentality in the 275 loop that is really interesting. And for me, that got really formed by 1, being in the circus, 2, living in Japan, and realizing that I spent, you know, my teenage years in Vanilla Hills, Kentucky. It's all white people in Vanilla Hills. there was the Tran family. There was 1 family from Vietnam, friends of mine. But other than that, it was essentially all white people. And the circus is completely different. And that has been a interesting life lesson for me, to work with people from all over. So did the circus thing, lived in New York City, went off to Japan. Then we had a 2-family in Erlanger, so that was always like the insurance plan. Like if I fall and break my neck, we'll just rent upstairs and I'll be in my wheelchair downstairs and my wife will work at Dixie Chili. So this is the weird insurance plan for the circus, okay? Because there's very, very little. I mean, we are insured, we have insurance, all that stuff, but it's just you have to do it differently, you know? It's not like we're working for a bank or a P&G, let's say. It's a different industry. So we moved to Chicago to make a movie, and the movie was interesting. It was a lot of fun, learned a lot in that process. Did a lot of improv comedy in Chicago. But before that, I had gotten paid to do improv in New York City. And there's such a weird structure in the theater in Chicago. There's all these improv groups. There's Improv Olympics, and then there's Second City, and there's all these other, you know, groups, Upright Citizens Brigade. There's all these improv groups, and they're basically like hustles. You got to start at like level 1A and do improv with like moms and cops and teenagers. And then if you're good, you get to 1B and 1C. And there's like 18 levels of how do you do improv. And basically, there's an industry there. And in Chicago, artists, actors, they work their 9 to 5 job, temp in, and then they do free theater or they pay to do improv. And there's a whole industry around this nonprofit theater drive. And after getting paid to actually do improv in New York City, I was like, you're crazy. I'm not going to pay money to do improv classes. Like I want to do improv. But I had an amazing opportunity through Ringling Brothers. So one of my great mentors, his name's Joel Jeske, and he's a brilliant clown. He had like his whole VHS collection of Buster Keaton, and I didn't even know who that was, and Charlie Chaplin, and he brought it with him to clown college. And so he's kind of educating, me about all this stuff. And he had worked with a guy named Bernie Solins, and Bernie Solins started Second City. So every Saturday Night Live guy, Colbert, Belushi, John Candy, you name it, any Tina Fey, Lisa Dract, Rachel Dract, sorry, every funny person has gone through the Second City. And Bernie hated the circus but loved clowns. It was so much fun to know Bernie, and I was really difficult when I met him. I mean, he called me up and was like, hey, I want you to do the show. And I said, look, I'm really busy, my friend. I got the circus I'm doing. Boom, 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 I can't do it. I said, listen, it's going to pay, and it's got 12 rehearsals. I got money to do the show. It's the history of comedy part 2. I need some clowns. And I was like, listen, I'm busy, man. I'm really busy. He was an old man. He's like, you got to meet me for coffee. So I met him for coffee, read the script. I was like, this is okay. I was like, look, I could do like 3 of the rehearsals, and I could do your shows, but, I'm sorry, I'm just busy. I go home, and I realized I had 2 books on my shelf by Bernie Solins. I didn't do my homework. Okay, I was kind of an ass to this gentleman, and Bernie cast me in 5 shows, and to work with this guy was so neat, and to learn from him and to be performing all over, to perform at Steppenwolf as a non-equity actor, it was so cool. So all the other artists of the show had to sign 15 pages of waivers to do these one-time shows, and I just had to sign one contract, and he liked working with me. I liked working with him. And Bernie really told me to do this. He said, listen, make them laugh and sell alcohol. This is how it works. Don't worry about, don't make a big nonprofit. Don't go here, don't go there. Make them laugh and sell alcohol. And that was brilliant. I should have listened to that advice a long time ago. So if you're a young artist out there, you can't run away with the circus anymore, okay? But if you can make them laugh and sell alcohol, like this is a sustainable way to make it go. So Chicago, we spent 9 years there, and the movie was neat, but it was tough, didn't pay, interesting experience. After 9/11, I really kind of gave this pause because we lived in New York City. We used to go dancing in the Twin Towers. There's a place called the Greatest Bar on Earth up there in Twin Tower number 2. And it was the B&T crowd, the bridge and tunnel crowd. And it was like the cheapest place to go dancing in New York, really. It was like a $20 cover. The drinks weren't great, but it was a live band. So my wife and I liked to dance. So we would go dancing up there. And when that tragedy happened, it was like a great pause because I was chasing this idea of being an actor. And then really kind of decided, the circus is more rewarding, and it's hard to believe that you can make more money as a clown than you can as an actor, okay? So I decided to put together a circus program called Circus Theme, Building Self-Esteem Through the Circus Arts. And I had always done circus kind of on the side. I was trying to be an actor. I would, perform. When I was in New York City, I was like the juggling Ken at Barbie parties, out on Long Island, and then one time I was Prince Charming for Cinderella, and we flew in on on Daddy's helicopter, Mommy and Daddy's helicopter. So we took the train to Greenwich. The driver picked us up. We drove to the helipad. Here we're flying in the helicopter, and the mom's yelling at the pilot, "Send out Cinderella, send out Cinderella." The pilot's like, "No, don't do it. It's too early. It's gonna." Cinderella got out of the helicopter, her wig blew off. I mean, it was hilarious. Like, you couldn't make this stuff up. So I'd make more money doing these crazy acting, circus, juggling jobs than I would doing anything else. So there's a way to make the circus work. Circus Theme, I started as a for-profit, and then I partnered with a youth service agency that just bought an old movie theater, and we did some really great circus stuff there for a long time. I made a nonprofit parallel to it, And then this nonprofit grew incredibly well, and it still exists today. Started in 2001, so this year will be celebrating their 18th year, or 17th year in business, which is tremendous. And it's worked with a lot of kids who have had very little. And I got to take this concept of the racial tension or dynamism from the circus and from Vanilla Hills and from my time in Japan to bring this circus together. So I was basically working with three groups of people that I'd never worked with before. I had African refugees from Sudan and from Eritrea and from Togo and from Ghana. So we had the east side and we had the west side, like not Cincinnati, like we're talking Africa. So you got Ghana and Togo and you got Eritrea and Sudan. And then we had African American kids, and then we had rich white Jewish kids. All right, so I had these three different groups. And in the circus, everybody was equal. It didn't matter how much your shoes cost, didn't matter who had a cell phone, didn't matter. It was what you could do. And the kids from Africa were the highest producing, artists. In a day they could learn to juggle. In a day they could learn to walk on a ball. In a day they could learn to do backflips. And all the American kids, both the white and the black kids, were like, I don't understand. Because the refugees were looking to them for what to wear and what to listen to and how to speak English. But these kids, because their gross and fine motor skills were so dynamic, because they grew up running around outside 350 days a year, and they climbed trees and they played with flip-flops and other, they didn't have Game Boys and other stuff, so they were so hungry to achieve. So it flipped the status. It took the people who were maybe least likely to achieve and put them on the top. And then they didn't have any other distractions. They didn't have horseback riding or oboe or bowling lessons. They got to do circus 3, 4, 5 days a week. And the other kids, and it was great to have them juggling together, to have them working together, to have Muslim kids standing on shoulders with, kids with Israeli Defense Force t-shirts. Their parents probably wouldn't be doing that. But in the circus, everybody was really collaborating and cooperating. And after September 11th, what is that? Like, how can you make money? The world was kind of, Mayday, Mayday. I was bussing tables and waiting in a bartender at a fancy restaurant called the North Pond Cafe. And this is like Tavern on the Green in Manhattan. Super fancy restaurant. I was ironing my tie to go when I was watching the TV on 9/11. And I was just kind of like dumbfounded. Of course, nobody did anything. No one went anywhere. 3 people were let go at that restaurant like that week because they just knew people weren't going to be fine dining. So I lost my job and, really started thinking, okay, what can I do? And when I between Ringling Brothers Clown College and the circus, I worked with a group called My Nose Turns Red. It's a great nonprofit circus organization here in the Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area. And I was kind of like their young muscle. Like I was teaching people how to walk in a ball and do other things. They're great, Steve and Gene are old hippie clowns, great people. But I was kind of their young, muscle to kind of connect it. So 3,000 people would audition for Ringling Brothers Clown College. 30 people would get in, and then 10 people would get a job. So it was highly selective and really exciting. So in between, I worked with them. And I loved working with the kids in Covington who had a lot of challenges and giving them the circus. Then we lived in New York City. I worked for a guy, Kevin O'Keefe. And these kids had everything. They had 3 houses, nannies, helicopters, but mom, no consequences. So working with kids at the Dwight School and Riverdale Country Day, these schools are $25,000 in Manhattan. And I'm kind of jumping around here a little bit, but those kids had everything. And Circus Team was really blending these 2 concepts, one from Kentucky and one from Manhattan, to try to connect the dots. And Kevin O'Keefe said, listen, call any country club or tennis group. They'll have tennis balls. And do juggling workshops all around town. You'll find the right place that you want to work with. So that's what we did. We get tennis balls, teach kids to juggle in a 2-day workshop. So we did Union League Boys and Girls Club. This place, Alternatives in Chicago, was the best one, though. So kids came back the second day, and of course, they lost their tennis balls or they didn't have any. And I gave them 3 more. And I was a terrible juggler, but I had to juggle before I went to clown college. That was the one thing that we had to do. And it's neat because it's a simple skill, it's tangible, and tennis balls make it hard, though, because they bounce away. But they'd come back and I'd give them 3 more. And then they'd come back the next Thursday. I lost all my, here more. So the kids were testing you, like they wanted you to yell at them for losing their tennis balls. But in the circus, it's all carrots, you know, like there's no sticks. You don't get a tiger to jump through a flaming hoop based on the stick. It's all carrots. And those kids in Chicago and the kids in New York and the kids in Kentucky, they need attention. They need to be recognized for doing something that's dangerous. And that's what the circus really does. It's dangerous, it's exciting, and it's consequences. And the wealthy kids have very few opportunities for consequence because their parents don't either, right? They've got great lawyers, they've got a big trust fund, you know, they've got great accountants. Their consequences are different than my consequences. And, you know, like the spinning plate, okay? So this is an incredibly easy skill. All you have to do is hold the bottom of the stick, make the stick go around, snap the stick in the middle, and you can spin it. But a lot of times, if you can't do it, it's the plate's fault, it's the stick's fault. If you have a lot of money, there's no personal responsibility, so it's the fault of the product, okay? I taught at a lot of Montessori schools and Waldorf and kind of, you know, very creative schools. And these schools, they can't spin a plate because they can't follow directions. There's like 8 ways to spell cat, you know. But no, there's really one way to spell cat. And then you go to like the Laboratory School of Chicago, you know, like this school, brilliantly fast jugglers, very fast spinning plates, but not very creative from a clown's point of view. So it's neat to be able to teach circus across this very different platform of people and to give them this achievement. So right now, circus, we teach circus at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. So Cincinnati Children's, we've been there for 6 years and we're impacting their patient experience. We're giving people something to do while they're stuck in waiting rooms. And right now we're at the ophthalmology clinic. So for about 45 minutes, half hour, you'll wait to see the doctor. And in that time, the kid will be struggling with this. They're like, oh, you know, and they'll get angry that they can't spin the plate. But then we give them the peacock feather and they bounce the peacock feather and that's all cool. Then they come back after their eyes are dilated and they have to sit there for another hour or 2 hours. And it's when they can't see that they really figure out how to spin this plate. And then they feel like they're achieving something. And then once they're doing that, the parents are happy because their kids aren't crawling the wall. Doctors are happy, nurses are happy. So the hospital's saving money from a recruiting and retention point of view. Then they're making money because they have higher HCAP scores. That stands for Healthcare Consumer Assessment of Healthcare Providers and Systems. So these 12 metrics, patient experience is one of the big ones. So we're driving patient experience up. So thanks to my work in the circus and then working with a couple different circus groups and some major catastrophes like 9/11 kind of forces us to figure out how can we still make money? How can a circus work? And when tragedies happen, people still get sick, okay? And they still go to school. So we've been developing these models of circus opportunity to work in the healthcare segment and the education sector. And then leveraging it. As soon as you teach a kid to juggle scarves, then you juggle balls. Once you juggle balls, you juggle rings. Once they've juggled rings, they're juggling clubs. Once they're doing clubs, they're doing knives. And the knives aren't sharp, but they're heavy and there's a consequence there. And then you get an 11-year-old kid, it's like, all right, it's time to juggle fire. And the parents are totally for it. They're like, I've watched our kid go from here to here to here. I've watched them learn and achieve. The fire, they're not going to really burn themselves because when they're flipping the torch, they're not going to hold on to it. And we dip one torch at a time and they're juggling one on fire and then 2 on fire. And then these kids, they're like really able to do things in a new way because they've seen achievement, they've tasted it, they've performed for their parents and their peers. And that's essentially how Circus Mojo works right now and how my old circus team works right now. And there's this great opportunity because with all these Ronald McDonalds who are out of work, okay, and then Ringling Brothers closing, there's all these other artists who are out of work. We're basically putting this pipeline together where Cincinnati is a neat market, but it's rather conservative, let's just say. But if we can work at the #3 Children's Hospital, and we can work at Children's Home of Northern Kentucky, and we can work at the schools across this area, if we can make it happen here, it's a lot easier to make it happen in Seattle and Boston and Savannah and Phoenix, all these other places. So we're basically putting together this franchised model that offers an artist an opportunity to work in sectors that quite frankly need us. They don't know what to do with troublemaking kids at school. They don't know what to do when you're stuck in a waiting room. So we've been kind of making a lot of mistakes through trial and error. So my nonprofit Circus theme, they eventually sued me for trademark infringement, okay? And I'm really proud of this. It was a $500,000 lawsuit. We settled out of court. It was 5 years I couldn't produce or perform or coach or make mentor. It was very, they tried to get this clown to go away. And I explained to people that I'm a pie fighter, okay? It's sweet and dirty. When you mess with clowns, we're not going to fight with you in court. Why? We're building things. We're creating sustainable models. So the idea that Circus Theme continues is beautiful. The attorney who was working against me is a friend of mine now. Like, we've kind of kissed and all made up, and she sustained Circus Theme to keep going. And then we hosted the World Championships for this thing called the Gym Wheel. And her son is a major artist in this Gym Wheel deal. And it's awesome. So collaborating with people, finding solutions to things, and really working across the aisle and across the where you think is not going to work, there's solutions. There's win-win solutions that are possible. So a couple months ago, I was at the Children's Home in Northern Kentucky, and there's a great video, and these two state troopers who are basically like the Secret Service detail for the governor, Governor Bevin in Kentucky, they gave me a big hug and a fist bump chest. Hey, come here, Paulie, what are you doing? And Governor Bevin was like, who's this guy? You're supposed to be guarding me. You let your guard down to give me a big hug. And he's like, what's going on here? And I said, well, how you doing, Governor? I know these guys from when I toured Canada with Governor Beshear. And he's like, what? And I said, well, I bounced a chair on my chin at the big reception in Ottawa, and I always like to clear that with the guys with the guns and the radio pieces so they don't shoot me, So I gave them the power. Like, they're the kings, they're the powerful ones. Before I pick up a giant chair, I wanted them to know that I'm going to do a trick and not to shoot me. So we're in Ottawa with Beshear. I'm getting introduced. Boom, 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 boom. It's my turn. I do it. Everyone's clapping. The ambassador's there. What's going on? In Canada is where Cirque du Soleil is from, okay? So this is like one of their main industries is circus. And governor's like trying to understand, he's like, okay, why are we doing circus here at Children's Home? I said, well, we've been working with these guys and gals, the young men at Children's Home for years. And Sarah Warner, who's the therapeutic certified recreational specialist, she's been collaborating with me for a long time. And we're giving kids life skills so that they get attention in a positive way. So it's $60,000, Governor, to keep a kid in state's care, and it's somewhere between 28 and 23 to keep kids in foster care. So when a kid goes to a new school, they're juggling, they're spinning plates, they're doing backflips, they're bouncing a chair on their chin, and these are skills that they're getting attention in a positive way, and they're the cool new kid. And they teach other kids how to juggle, so they're accepted, engaged, entertaining. They're saving money for the state. They're making their teachers happy. Then when they go to foster care and they're going to family reunions, they're doing the same exact thing. So we're saving the state, 52 to 58% dollar for dollar when the state invests money teaching them circus skills. They're not setting trash cans on fire. They're not biting other students. They're not causing problems on the bus. They're actually the cool kids and getting accepted. And he was like, he couldn't argue that. And making the economic argument, it was cool as hell. And doing it through the Secret Service trained state troopers is really neat. So the government, people like to promote and make a lot of propaganda. So there's a group called the Koch brothers, and they're major players in the Republican Party. They have a thing called the Cato Institute. So they wrote a big blog post about government waste. And the smallest dollar amount was $7,500 to Circus Mojo, a Kentucky-based circus, to tour to Canada with Governor, da-da-da-da. And it was awesome to piss off the Koch brothers, okay? And then to take that article and that concept and then speak to Power, the governor, at the Children's Home in Northern Kentucky. It's been, a lot of fun And if I could put a little retort to the Koch brothers, what we did is we were able to leverage that opportunity to host this international event called the World Wheel Championships. So there's these big wheels that you roll around in. And it was invented in Germany in the 1920s. It's really a cool apparatus. I'm not very good at it, but I sponsored the visa for the 8-time world champion. His name is Wolfgang Beansel. And when Circus Theme was really growing, after about 5 years in, these young kids in Chicago, I'd trained them everything I could. I had trained them in the juggling to the best of my ability. I'd trained them in acrobatics with some help from some other acrobats. I'd trained them in juggling. So these are the basic 3 archetypes in the circus. You have clowns, you have jugglers, and you have acrobats. Okay? So Wolfgang called me. I could hardly understand him on the telephone, but he said he was a coach with Cirque du Soleil. I said, okay, well, you need help, I need a coach. So I sponsored his visa. It's called an O1 visa, and they're given to the highest performing artist or the best surgeon or whoever. It's the highest class of visa, and a great lawyer, Lisa, helped us get this visa. And Wolfgang came in, and he was the 8-time world champion on the wheel. So twice we've sponsored these international world championships, in 2013 in Chicago and then 2016 in Cincinnati. And when you have 250 athletes and coaches from 15 countries flying into CVG, and they're renting cars and they're eating, this turns out to be millions and millions of dollars in economic impact. And it's cool to take what the Cato Institute / Koch brothers think is government waste and flip it on them to really say, no, this is a millions and millions and millions of dollars of economic impact. Wolfgang and his partner Christian worked for the German Stock Exchange there, Eurex, and he couldn't come on a spousal visa. So these 2 gay guys have contributed from Germany. We got Wolfgang's visa, and they've made direct investments of over $100,000 into Ludlow, Kentucky. And I don't really get into saying a whole lot of that, but this is my opportunity to share who's making investments where. And if people in Ludlow understood that the largest investors in our project are 2 gay guys from Germany, that would maybe like really kind of reprogram where they're coming from. Ludlow is a small river town next to Covington, and a lot of racial tension and strife. And in the past, on the bridge, it was called a sundowner town. And it's terrible, but it was N-word, better be out by sundown or you'll be hanging from a tree. Okay? And we've hosted artists from 30 different countries to Ludlow, Kentucky. We sponsored visas for young Muslim men. Guess what? They didn't blow up anything. They just juggled, contributed, and went back home. Assalamu alaikum. You know, twice we've hosted Israelis from the program called the Dream Doctors Project. So we've had Jews come to town for weeks at a time. We've had all people from all over the world coming to Ludlow. And when I pick them up at the airport, we go down Mineola Pike, and then we drive the mountain road, and you can count how many stars and bars, Confederate flags there are between the airport and Ludlow. And we talk about the Mason-Dixon line, and we talk about Kentucky and the Civil War. We go to the Underground Freedom Center Museum while they're here to really explain the dynamics of the United States and racial tension. And the circus is for everybody. The circus works with everybody. And you know, Wolfgang's contribution to Ludlow is tremendous. His contribution to the United States is tremendous. And his contribution is just like working out what we're prejudiced is on. I mean, people are prejudiced against clowns. Clowns are scary, you know. Prejudice when I was in Japan, I was Gai Jing. Wolfgang produced the big opening for the gay games in Chicago at Soldier Field. And I sat down with, 8 young African and African-American teenagers, and I said, we have a great performance opportunity at Soldier Field. Are you ready for this? They're so excited. Is that where the Bears play this? I've never been there. I want to do it. All right, well, it's for the opening of the gay games. And they're like, F that. I'm not going to work with them. And, going on and on and on and on. And I said, well, do you know Wolfgang's gay? And then their minds were like, they couldn't process this. Because their coach, their mentor, who had spent years training them, giving them the backflips, helping them do all these things, they couldn't understand. And it was so fantastic. They said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm like, all right, well, then I'm not going to do circus with black people anymore, all right? So you all, I'm going to take a walk around the block. I'm going to come back and ask you if you want to do this performance opportunity. And you guys get the chance to make a second answer. Sure enough, they did. And these young kids have gone on to do amazing things. And we can thank Wolfgang for that. And we can thank Germany, really, because there's a partnership we work with in Germany called Circus Pimparello. We've been taking young kids from Ludlow, Kentucky, and from Chicago, kids who never flew on a plane before, on their first flight to Germany. When you take a kid out of the neighborhood and show them what their opportunities are, it completely changes it. It's solving generational poverty. Because I don't care if you live in a hut in Sudan, I don't care if you live in a house in Ludlow, I don't care if you live in the projects of Chicago. Parents say, yeah, they want their kids to go real far, but really they want them to stay right there so they could take care of them when they're old. Like, that's the gravitational pull of poverty. And when you get that parent to sign that passport application and trust a coach in a system and a group of people to take their young person to fly to Germany and do a 3-week tour, they never go back. They just keep going and think, what is possible and what can we do? Right now, we've got a young man, Jesse Suttles, who grew up in Ludlow, had never been across the river before he went and taught with us at John P. Parker School. This is in Madisonville. He was in a room of 30 African-American kids. We had 3 teenagers from Ludlow. They're getting paid $10 an hour to teach spinning plates, juggling, and feather bouncing in a gym full of black kids. They had never been to Ohio. They'd never been in a room full of black people. And here they are, teaching circus, getting paid, doing something. Then a couple weeks later, we went up the hill to Fort Mitchell Country Club to perform for the Covington Rotary Club's 100-year anniversary. And they said, this is like a movie. I've never been somewhere like this. And they went to the bar and ordered a Coke, and it was free. And they talked about this free Coke for like a week. And this is just up the hill in Fort Mitchell with the country club. So the circus, they literally ran away with the circus. And now Jesse Suttles is on a full scholarship, studying circus in Germany. Tate West is a young girl from Ludlow who rode her unicycle all around town. Her first flight was with Circus Mojo to tour to Germany. She spent her junior year in a circus school there, where half the day they do academics and half the day they do circus. And that's how they solve ADHD. Kids are not on Ritalin in Germany. Kids do something for half the day and then sit and learn half the day. And if they can't score well on their sitting and learning, they can't go to the circus. So guess what? They buckle down and they train on their tight wire and they train on their German. And these are the opportunities we have. And to explain this to Governor Bevin is fantastic. To explain this to other leaders is really cool. Congressman Massey was in my building in the old Ludlow Theater. So we bought this old theater in 2009. We threw a big party and flags from around the world were there. And I challenged Congressman Massey, and the judge was there, and the mayor of Ludlow's there, all these people are there. And I said, Congressman, let's play a little geopolitics, sir. How many nations can you name? And of course he said Israel. I'm like, oh yeah, Israel. We've had 2 groups from Israel here. At the University of Haifa, there's a degree in medical clowning that's shared between the nursing school and the theater school. And we're building an education system kind of based on that, plus my Friends in Germany model. He's like, okay, starting to kind of process, but not believing me. And I said, you see those performers, they're from Mexico, sir. They're here legally, okay? They're on a B1 visa and a B2 visas, so they're here legally, and they're not cutting grass, all right? They're not working at Kroger's. They're not taking jobs away from American circus freaks. Mexico actually makes better circus performers than the United States does. That's why we have to import this talent. He was having a hard time getting his head around that. But then I said, see this flag, sir? That's the Indonesian flag. And we sponsored visas for young Muslim men, 2 young Muslim men from Indonesia to come to work in Ludlow. Now he's really kind of not getting it. One of my students, Dan Roberts, he started a circus in Indonesia, and USAID gave him $100,000. That's a fortune here. That's a fortune in Jakarta. But Dan grew up there. He worked with Circus Team. He went in Chicago. Then he started the project in Indonesia. Great system. Keep kids out of trouble. Give them a little wage. Show them opportunity. $100,000 from USAID. His project grew. He's now back in the United States as the executive director of Circus Team. The Red Nose Foundation, Hidung Merah Circus in Jakarta still exists. The kids went home back after their tour in the United States, they're big kids in their community, so they're now a major part of the project in Indonesia. And I said, Congressman, you could build smart clowns or you could build smart bombs. For 20% of one smart bomb, you can keep all kinds of young Muslim kids off the streets, out the mosques, and you have them do something productive. And Congressman Massey said, oh, I could get behind that. I understand that. You know, and he says, I'm in the Tea Party. And I said, I know. I'm in the beer party. Okay, a little bit different. But I have a great picture in his office in D.C. His chief of staff tweeted it out of me balancing the chair on my chin. And the tag on Twitter was like, our constituents are worried about a balanced budget, you know, and we are, you know, and it's common ground with Congressman Massey. So the clown dealing with the king, messing it all around. But I'll wrap up with this whole idea of circuses. Circuses make money selling concessions, okay? In the United States, they do anyway. So when I was a clown with Ringling Brothers, the guy that owns it is a billionaire, Feld Entertainment. He's still in business. He's doing great. Just because he shut down Ringling, it was just a cost-saving mechanism from him, all right? So he won his lawsuit against PETA. People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals came in and sued him, and all these other animal rights groups because he said he was abusing the elephants. He spent $60,000 on veterinary care for every elephant. He spent $11,500 on every clown, okay? Like, that was my salary. I made $237 a week. We had to pay him $10 to live in a circus train. Total hustle. Like, they treated the animals much better than they treated the people. Now, that's not to say the people were treated real well, okay? But it was amazing how well they were treated. So, Feld Entertainment, once he bought the circus from the Ringlings, and then he started the leaseholds for all the arenas all around the United States, then he started licensing Walt Disney on Ice. Okay, now how many moms and dads took out a second mortgage to provide ice time for their daughter who didn't get to the Olympics, okay? There are a ton of these people, a ton of these Olympic skaters, you know, who work for Walt Disney on Ice. So he licensed Walt Disney on Ice. He's making a fortune there. Then he says, okay, what's the even better way to make money? All right, we'll take the ice away, we'll fill it with mud, and we'll have monster trucks and nitro cowboys, motorcycle guys go around. So every dollar in the circus, he probably saw a 20-cent profit. Every dollar in ice shows, you probably saw 60 cents profit. Every dollar in the mud motorcycles, you probably see 75 cents profit. So he got rid of the circus this year because he finally got the license for Marvel Live. So in all the place of the circus dates, now we have superheroes zipping around as Spider-Man and Thor and whatever. And I go, well, I don't know all my superheroes, but that's how he's going to make money. So a box of popcorn, they sell it for 15 bucks. The box costs 2 cents. The popcorn costs 1 cent. The guy's making $14.97 per popcorn, okay? Cotton candy, ice balls. The dude's a billionaire, all right? And his butt's in the seats, okay? That's how he's making money. Butts in the seats, sell him a concession. So that's the capitalist circus system. But our friends at Cirque du Soleil, the Soviet Union built the circus, okay? And that was their highest art form. Every building in Russia and the USSR, all over, from Kazakhstan to Irkutsk to Petersburg, St. Petersburg, they all had circus buildings. And their masses would go to the circus. That's in the Cold War, the USSR spent a lot of money on circus, and the United States were capitalists, so we developed Major League Baseball and the NFL and the NBA. So our people watch sports, their people watch circus. So when the Soviet Union falls apart, okay, there's all these amazing pool of talent. And these were the highest earners, so they had a lot of pension. Like they were really treated well in the Soviet Union. So Canada would accept them for visas. So Cirque du Soleil are a bunch of street performers who got some money to blow fire and walk stilts and celebrate Montreal's 400th anniversary, the Quincentennial. And then they started importing amazing Russian circus artists and made it a business. And our country would not give visas to those old Soviets, okay, but Canada would. So they put these Russian artists in spandex and put some new age music behind it, add a little smoke machine, and there's this unlimited pipeline of Soviet circus stars. So that is like the socialist model of circus, okay? So Cirque du Soleil is a very high art form. Then they started selling really expensive tickets. Then they started to connect with all this casinos out in Las Vegas. And Las Vegas needed people to go to their casino, so they would comp them free tickets there. So Cirque du Soleil is a billion-dollar organization, and they are basically tapped into all the Soviet talent. So they don't make money on concessions, so that's a different circus system. So how do you make money in a circus now? You sell concessions. So we got a project called the Circus Brewing Company. For years at the Ludlow Theater, we did crazy events. We did big-time wrestling, we did square dances, we do death metal shows, and we would do circus acts. So we would get visas for people from other countries. They were coming to perform in Ludlow, and they needed butts in the seats. So I said yes to every wacky show we could possibly do. So we provided the circus. We provided the door for the wrestlers and the square dance. They got to keep the door. We sold other people's beer, but the margins aren't that great. So there's the PBR tall boy. You buy it for $5. No, you sell it for $5. You buy it for 80 cents. But there's only so many 24-ounce beers you're going to sell people. So for 4 years, we did events, hosted artists from 30 countries into Ludlow, all legal with the visas. Everything's cool. But I was like, man, there's got to be a better way to do this. So in 2010, I was in Berlin at a circus conference, and a guy named Matthijs Vermeulen from Ghent, Belgium, which is Flemish-speaking Belgium, he brought beer. He and I were the only people who were self-funded on this trip. There were artists from all over Europe, but they basically, government grants funded them to be there. Again, the social circus model, socialist circus. So it was awesome. I licensed the Circus concept from him. So we now make Circus beer in our theater in Ludlow. It's Belgian-inspired, European-inspired, German-inspired. We don't use his exact recipe, but we took a concept that works, adjusted it for the United States marketplace. And we registered with the Security and Exchange Commission. We're the first brewery to do that. So for $1,000, people can invest and own a piece of our brewery. But really, it's more of a destination that sells a high-margin concession. We're not going to can and bottle. We're not going to compete with Rheingeist and Mad Tree on Kroger shelf space. That's a Cold War that I don't want to participate in. So Flanders is weird. So you have in Belgium, you have Ghent, you got Flemish speaking, you got the Wallonians, you got the Francophones, you got these three tribes in Belgium. The one doesn't like the EU, that's in Ghent. So he's not a fan of the government. That's why he makes beer to fund his circus project. So I'm working to make beer to fund our circus project. So for a year now, we've been making beer. Seligman is our distributor, so all over Northern Kentucky, our beer is distributed. Bars that pour our beer, circus artists show up, so we're blowing fire out front. We're riding our unicycle through the bar, and everybody's like, what is that? They're all taking their phones out. They're Snapchatting it. They're Instagramming it. They're tweeting it out. So we're taking the circus, bringing it to bars, hotels, restaurants. They're excited. They're spending money on trivia. They're spending money on bands. We're supplementing that. We name the bars additionally insured. You know, we're not this fly-by-night circus project. But we're taking this circus concept that works and monetizing it through concession sales. And the goal really is to create jobs for these circus artists. So in the day, we work at children's hospitals and children's home in Northern Kentucky and schools. So we do that during the day, and we work in detention centers, and we work in nursing homes. That's the day and the afternoon. But I can't pay a living wage for these artists. So by adding the brewing company on the side, I can pay them even more money to be the marketing side of it. So we don't have Clydesdales, we don't got Spud McKenzie, we've got Circus Freaks. And we're taking these concepts that work all around the world, adjusting them for the marketplace of the United States. And we've got 113 investors who've invested in the Circus Brewing Company. So for $1,000 they bought in. Our largest investor bought 50 units. He was a big investor in other breweries, so he knows breweries work. And the show must go on, you know, and the clown will keep subverting authority, whether it's the mayor of Ludlow or Congressman Massey or Governor Bevin. So it's awesome to sit before the throne and talk about what we're doing and paying our taxes and creating jobs for people. And I really appreciate this opportunity to share, you know, a bit of circus history, a bit of my personal history, and how can you make money in a circus. There are still ways to do it. The circus predates Cirque du Soleil. Was just sold for $1 billion to Chinese and American investors. So someone did buy that. Now NFL's doing it, and Blue Man Group, all these weird. Ringling Brothers, the guy who owned it, is a billionaire. Do I want to be a billionaire? I won't say no to it, okay? Our brewing system I bought through a bankruptcy. Ballast Point Brewing started off on that same exact brewing system. It's worth about 200 grand. We bought it for $49,000. And Ballast Point just sold for 1.3 billion to Constellation Brands. So there's billionaires out there. And if there's any billionaires listening, you know, watch out for us clowns, okay? Thank you. And thank you, Shane, for this opportunity. And we'll see you all down the road. That's what they say in the circus.